It's March 13th, 2018, and this is WDYTA. I'm Gavin.
I'm Drea.
And I'm Alan.
I messed it up. All right, whatever. So, Alan, what did you think about the movie Annihilation?
So, you guys went and saw it a couple weeks before I did. And
yeah.
You insisted that I watch it, so I did.
It's been brewing with us for a few weeks.
Brewing, yeah. So I actually have a bunch of notes. So I was thinking I'll go down slowly down this list of notes, and we'll see where we come from there.
Well, okay. So obvious spoilers if we're talking about this movie,
right?
And then should we give it a brief?
Oh yeah, there's going to be a bunch of spoilers here. So if you haven't seen it, just stop watching this episode. I don't know what else to say. It's been out.
I mean, if we had to give a spoiler warning, people probably already know what the movie synopsis is if they're listening to it. But I guess maybe they haven't listened to it. Okay, all right. Brief synopsis.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's this potentially alien thing that crashed into Earth and created this thing called the Shimmer that people go into, and it messes up their DNA. And that's the basis of the movie.
The first kind of note I had was regarding that. So like you see like the meteor come down, it hits the lighthouse, and it starts expanding, right?
Yeah.
So I was trying to, in my head, I had two different thoughts. Like, is that a weapon, or is that the actual extraterrestrial organism?
I
was leaning on the fact that that's the organism because they all seem to be kind of connected,
right?
But I guess it could be some form of bioweapon that they created too. They appeared to have like a whole central hub at the bottom of that lighthouse. It kind of looked like there were tunnels leading off to different sections.
Right.
And then I was trying to figure out like the deeper meaning of the whole thing. And then so I had two different thoughts there. One was like I wasn't 100% sure on this, but I felt like they were trying to represent cancer or a form of cancer, because it comes back a couple times in the movie. So in my notes I wrote, cancer idea comes back when she's looking at the plants, like when she's on the bridge. The doctor is fighting cancer, the psychologist. There's a growing tumor or this organism that works like cancer cells. And then there's multiple failed treatments. And it's and sometimes they report that cancer patients die screaming. And a lot of the people in this movie died.
Wow, I didn't catch that.
That's an interesting detail,
yeah.
Huh?
And then the other.
Oh, go ahead. Also, the one character's daughter died of cancer too, right?
Leukemia, yeah.
Leukemia, yeah.
Yeah. And then the other like kind of deeper meaning, I guess I took from it, I felt like was, I wrote it's about self-destruction.
Yeah.
People destroy themselves. One of the character cuts herself. One lady lost her daughter. One lady was a drug addict, I think. An alcoholic. Okay. The main character cheats on her husband, and the Shimmer's like triggering it all. And I think you and I were talking about this for a minute about how, like, remember the house they go in at the end there?
The lighthouse at the end?
Not the lighthouse, the house that
where the bear attacks him.
Where the bear attacks him, yeah.
Yeah.
That house looked, and initially in my head I was like, that looked exactly like her house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is her house, right? So my notes I wrote, the house looks like Lena and Kane's house. Shimmer is sending it back to her, like, hey man, remember this?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I thought it was more representation of Kane's, or because if Kane was becoming more and more part of this world, I thought he had somehow helped form this. Because the copy who comes out of her husband at the beginning, she goes, how'd you get here? And he goes, I walked to the top of the stairs and you were there. And it's like, what is he talking about? So I thought like that gave him muscle memory, or gave him a false memory of real Kane.
Right.
They showed like, like that sequence, the whole sequence with the house. They show her like sitting at the table, like looking at that, like when she realizes her cells are changing. And she pushes the microscope away. It was a cut to him sitting at the table, like drinking the water.
Yeah.
Yep.
And also when she walked in the house, the original shot of the stairway to her house had 3 frame pictures hanging on it. And then when they're in the Shimmer, it only has 1. And I couldn't see what was in that photograph.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
But I kind of felt like it might be important.
Mm-hmm.
They're like subtle hints, right? Like they were showing like, I was reading an article about. They talked about how like after she drinks the water, you can see the water mutating.
Yeah, maybe. So the thing that I read about the water thing at the end was like somebody said like the reflection in the water, like her hand's reflection in the water is wrong, and they were using it as like evidence to suggest that she's still the alien creature at the end. But
yeah,
my theory doesn't line up with that.
Alan, do you think she's an alien creature at the end or not?
So I wrote is Lena a clone? I said post shimmer is a mutation. Even it is a mutation of her. Either way, like either whether she made it out of there or the clone, the whatever it is, made it out of there, she still would have been a different person.
Yeah,
because her cells were rapidly changing the whole time she was in there.
Right.
What did I write here?
Because we're definitely camp. It's Lena who exits.
Right.
Yeah, I believe it's her that exited that thing, but I also believe that it's a different, like she's got that. So like at the end there, when you see them like hug and their eyes are both glowing all weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, he is already changed into that thing. The version of her husband. That's the. I don't want to call it a clone. It seems like it's almost an identical like I guess a clone doesn't seem like the right word to me. I don't know.
It's a mimic or a
doppelganger. It's like another version of him, just kind of split. It's like cell DNA splitting, right? So
yeah.
It's basically split off of him. It is him. It is just a more evolved version of him, right? What else did I write here? Oh, okay. Yeah, so I wrote more DNA can be refracted. Memories equal Lena's house. And then also, did you notice that the girl Anya, she had like a snake tattoo on her hand, but at the end of the movie, Lena had it on her arm.
Yeah, I didn't notice that Anya had it. I noticed that the guy who becomes part of the wall, the soldier.
Oh, was
I noticed it on his arm.
Yep, it's on him.
Oh yeah, snake tattoo too, by the way.
Yeah, so that tattoo has a whole lot of significance to the movie. So that snake tattoo is actually what is it, Ouroboros? So it's a snake eating its own tail, but it's actually modified. So normally you just see it as a circle. In the movie, it's actually an infinity symbol.
What does Ouroboros
mean? So in Ouroboros, snake eating its own tail is sort of like life and death and renewal, continuous self-destruction and bringing renewal, right? So that tattoo, I think, is really the crux of the entire movie. The movie is about, for me, self-destruction and rebuilding and rebirth through self-destruction.
Well, and that's an interesting, because me and Gavin going into this movie heard the term annihilation, and we think of wars and we think of just death and like ending. And it was important that this movie, was making I think they say the definition in the movie, but anyway, you look it up later, and it has a very science. It's used in science to mean not just an ending, but something has to end and be destroyed in order to create something new.
Right.
And so I'm like, and I love those touches throughout this movie of like the snake. And then she's reading when it's a flashback to her and Kane on the couch reading. She's reading the life of Henrietta Lacks, which is about this woman's cells being used.
I didn't even notice the book.
Yeah, the book's a really big deal.
The song playing by who's it by?
Crosby, Stills and Nash.
Crosby, Stills and Nash.
I remember that.
Yeah, I love that in a movie. How, I mean, maybe I didn't think they were too obvious, and I didn't think they were hitting us over the head. It's just all these sweet little details that if you know what Henrietta Lacks, the book is about, you go.
Well, why don't we talk about that real quick?
Oh yeah.
You can go ahead if you want.
Well, Henrietta Lacks was a woman who died from cancer, but her cells, what was with her cells?
Cervical cancer, right? But it was weird because she had this weird tumor that was rapidly reproducing faster than anything they'd seen before. So they harvested some of it, and they used those tumor cells, which are technically her cells, to test vaccines and all kinds of stuff.
They've been using it for years without the permission of the family or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was like the weird controversy, was that she never consented to this. They just did it. But also the question that the movie brings up is how much of you has to remain for you to still be here, for you to still be alive?
Yeah.
Is it how is it if a single cell of you still exists, are you still alive? So I think that's why that book was there. but it's also about rapid cell growth and regeneration and change and cancer. Again, another cancer reference.
Yeah, the cancer stuff really like stuck out to me. So
yeah, and the Crosby, Stills, Nash lyrics are like 1 and then 2,
right?
And then 3. 2 we are together. 3 something.
I don't 3 together.
Oh,
they're what is it? They're and then for each other. I don't remember the lyrics exactly,
but it was just it kept playing it throughout, and then you had the snake Ouroboros eternity on her arm. I'm just like,
right.
wow, I love these details.
Right. It's sort of like these little clues here and there. But I think the theme of the movie shows up when Natalie Portman's character was Lena. Mm-hmm. Her and Kane are talking in bed about she has this idea that God made a mistake, right? Oh, yeah. God made a mistake in that our cells self-destruct. And she's talking about also like the beginning of the universe could have started with a single cell and then it split into 2. And we may have all come from like everything we know. It could have come from one singularity, right?
Singularity. Yeah.
So she mentions that God made a mistake in that creating our cells that die. And then Kane says God doesn't make mistakes, which I think is a really interesting. I think that's actually a little bit of religious commentary potentially. Sure. But
or even worldview, because
right. Well, I think it's religious commentary because of Kane's fate.
Yeah.
Yeah. He wasn't a scientist. So
well, right. That's another really interesting tidbit of symbols. I feel like we're all over the place, and it's probably going to be all over the place because there's so much going on that I'm trying to figure out. Okay, the through line, the theme of the movie for me is rebuilding yourself, changing, coming out the other side as a completely different person by annihilating yourself, right? By facing. Okay, I'm gonna start getting into the real deep stuff for a minute.
So there was a thought I had about that too, like.
Okay, go ahead, because I've got
reinventing yourself. Like I felt like even if she like at the end sequence there, even though she got she became that other being as well. It took me. I thought about it over and over. Like why would that being just go like destroy its own house, right? Essentially,
right.
Like it hung on to that flash grenade, right? And then it's on fire and it's just standing there. And then it's like, oh, I'll just crawl back in this hole and burn everything to the fucking ground.
Right.
Like, and at first I was like, that thing's supposed to be smarter than that. Like, why would it do that? But then what I wrote was Lena transfers her code or her DNA sequence over to this thing. And then along with it, it took all her self-destructive human behavior. Which,
right.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's potential.
I'm not sure if that's the case or not, but that's kind of like I was trying to, because in my head I was like, these things spent all this time building this, and now it's like Kane blew himself up, not
right.
Alien. You know what I'm saying?
Wait,
Alien was like, go ahead, man, blow yourself up. I'm just gonna film you.
Well, I think you're bringing up a point of view that I didn't have, that I've been reading in a lot of comments, and I find really interesting, is that the movie is just so much about nature. And does nature have reason? You know, if like, I don't know, a wolf attacks a rabbit in a documentary, we don't think it's an evil creature. We just go, that's nature. Right. And so much about this book was natural. Like it's hitting us over the head with nature. It's these mutations and some of these things we think are unnatural, but they're happening in nature. And so it's just interesting to me that everyone has this idea about this alien creature, that it must be sentient, or like not just sentient, but like thinking and super smart. And to me, it is just a force of nature.
Well, not only that, it's all it does is reflect what it just reflects whatever the person it's interacting with is doing. So
do you think the fact that all it's reflecting all DNA that's in its vicinity, and the fact that all DNA comes from one original source, according to this, is why things were merging together when they're not supposed to merge together?
So I think the idea of the shimmer is just that in the shimmer, which I think represents our subconscious, is that things don't work the same way. So things that we think are impossible are possible. And I think that's really where the metaphor comes from.
In its nature is to constantly replicate, constantly change. that's its nature. That's not an evil thought or a thing of I want to take over this world. It's just doing what it does, and it happens to be replicating everything and spreading out. So that's why the sand castles are right outside the lighthouse. That's why the closer you get to it, the mutations are harsher or weirder. Yeah, and the farther you get away, it's just because you're not as close to it as possible as other things. But I don't think it has any negative intentions.
I don't think it has any intention. Yeah, it just is, right? Yeah. I think part of it is that it's hard for people to wrap their heads around because I don't think there's any good or evil in this movie. It just is. Things just exist and they do what they do, and that's it.
That's how I took it, at least.
So yeah, I mean, can we talk for a minute about the nightmare fuel that was that bear?
Oh my god!
God, that scene. There's two scenes in this movie.
First off,
that are amazing.
That was probably one of the most unsettling scenes I've seen in a while in a movie.
Yeah.
Second thought I had was I'm not going to sleep well tonight. Did you notice that it had like a bear skull mixed with a human skull?
Was that what it was?
Yeah, it was like I had to go look up some screenshots of it later.
Yeah.
My friends was talking to me about that, and I was just like, huh. I was so scared during that whole scene, I really didn't notice the skull, you know? I was so focused on the fact that every time that thing went to growl, you can hear the woman dying too.
Yeah.
Right? And so yeah, if you get a chance to look it up, it's like the middle part of it, I think, is like a human skull, and it branches out. And then I went and looked up some articles on it. Funny story, the guy who created the special effects for that bear, the last movie he worked on was Paddington Bear.
Oh my god, that's messed up.
So that scary bear in the movie is named Paddington.
Oh my god.
Wait, what? The bear in Annihilation is named Paddington?
The bear in Annihilation is named Paddington.
No way.
The guy who worked on that bear, the movie he worked on before that, the CG he did was for Paddington Bear, the children's movie. But he was the one who was talking about, he said they kind of merged human and bear human and bear skulls to get kind of that skull we see.
Yeah.
And then another friend of mine made an interesting point. Like, you know, I was like, holy crap, that thing was mimicking that girl's, like, either her dying voice or her actual physical voice yelling, right?
Yeah.
And then one of my friends was telling me that, like, there are actual animals in the wild that will mimic sounds of their prey to attract other, like, things from its, like, you know, what do you call it, flock or club or what's the word?
I want to be part of the bear club.
The pack, you know, like
that's a club.
Words were failing me there for a minute, but you get what I'm saying. Like they mimic those sounds, so like I think they kind of took that idea and then made it scary. And I'm trying to think.
Well, you know what's funny is everyone thought this scene was really scary, and I think it was scary. Like I do think that, but like I didn't find it that disturbing. And I'm like, why? Why don't I find it disturbing? I hate scary things. And have you ever seen Full Metal Alchemist?
Yes.
Spoilers for that.
Oh yeah,
now.
Let's not talk about it.
The new one? I haven't seen the new live one.
No, the old one with the little girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I'm just saying, like, I feel like I've seen this before. So like, I was watching it and I was like, yes, yeah. And like, I walked out and like, everyone's like,
this is fine.
Let's talk about that bear scene. That bear scene's so scary. And I'm like, it was scary. Like it was tense, but I'm like, oh, that's scary.
First off,
that was horrifying.
What would Sailor Moon do right now?
Yeah.
Second,
Moon, crystal escalation, and heal it, and then it would be fine.
With the power, what does she say? I'll punish you.
Moon healing escalation.
Yeah.
My second question with that bear was how come it didn't attack them when they were tied to the chair?
Well, it doesn't have eyes.
Right. I think it didn't know they were there until it did try to attack them. And then the one girl comes back and just machine guns it to death.
But I mean, I guess because like there's.
I don't know how real bears act, but I don't think they just come in and start attacking unless they see you running or somehow prompting attack. They're just sitting there in the chairs. You know what I mean? Like so it was about to start going. Are you food?
Right.
But like it wasn't.
Because he put his paw, like his mouth, on that one girl's shoulder.
Right.
Well, because it's test bite. That's what I'm saying. If you're running away, if you're running toward it, if you're looking big, it's going to attack you.
Like the play dead thing, right?
But if they're in a chair, it's like, are you food? Like, I'm going to start doing test bites and things like that.
Right.
That's what I thought.
But, okay, so are we through most of your list yet, Alan?
So I had two things at the bottom here.
Okay.
Well, one thing, going back to the thing where you said like how she talks about God made a mistake.
Yeah.
What I wrote down from that was, yeah, she said God made a mistake, and then she had, I don't remember exactly what she said, but I wrote, he gave us a gene that prevents us from being immortal. And then she had a line, I think it was something like, we aren't suicidal, but we're destructive. And that's where I kind of went, oh, this movie's about being kind of destructive.
Right.
And then I wrote blah blah blah. Kane and Lena regarding their doubles or their shimmer doubles or whatever you want to call them. I wrote they have both destroyed part of themselves in order to keep their DNA in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And we already established that, so that's whatever.
A really good point, though.
So and then the last theory, I don't remember, like none of my friends can remember this, but movie kind of reminded me of the theory of 46 and 2.
Yeah. That actually segues perfectly into what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, you just.
Do you want me to read off this definition?
I
could read off the definition of 46 and 2 real quick, and then you can take over.
Sure, yeah. I might expand on it a little bit, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So the premise is that humans could deviate from their current state of human DNA, contains 44 autosomes and 2 sex chromosomes. And the next step of the evolution would likely result in human DNA being reorganized into 46 autosomes and 2 sex chromosomes. And there's obviously a lot more to that. So,
okay, so where to begin? All right, so the idea of 46 and 2 is actually, so there's a Tool song called 46 and 2 that ties directly into this movie, and I'm like, this guy's got to be a Tool fan, but we'll see. So the song is talking about facing your shadow self and achieving the next stage in human evolution through confronting. Carl Jung, philosopher who comes up with this idea of our subconscious and these different stages of ourselves. And we have different, in his mind, we have different layers of our subconscious, right? So we have our consciousness, which is our perceived reality, and then digging below the surface, we have our ego, our true self, and in between our ego and our true self, we have our shadow self, which is basically a manifestation of everything, sort of negative traits that we possess that we ignore, things that we don't necessarily like about ourselves, but we're not projecting them outward onto other people subconsciously. So sometimes it's like the idea of, okay, I have this negative trait that I don't like in myself, but I'm actually seeing it in someone else, and that's why I don't like that person, but it really has to do with me. That sort of base level understanding stuff. So the song 46 and 2 talks about, facing your shadow, coming through the other side to achieve the next level of human evolution, which would be 46 and 2. Current humans are 44 and 2, and there's actually sort of the first manifestations of humans were 42 and 2, which were basically humans who acted more like monkeys. They weren't really able to think the same way that we can. And the idea is that at 44 and 2, we have a consciousness, we have a perception of our consciousness, but we can't control all of our minds or bodies. So theoretically, at 46 and 2, you would be able to control your thoughts completely, and also your cells, which means you'd be able to control whether or not your cells destroy themselves. So the thesis and the things I see in this movie that connect to this are, she talks about how God made a mistake, and he said God doesn't make mistakes, right? So that can be interpreted both ways in this movie. Is, okay, so our cells destroying themselves, is that our nature? That they talk about self-destruction, and self-destruction being a part of human nature all the way down to a cellular level. Like on our, at our most smallest point, we are still self-destructive. So I feel like I'm just rambling at this point, but
no, I agree with what you're saying. Like I definitely didn't embellish on that, but
so in the movie, the characters enter the shimmer because they're being self-destructive, right? They're faced with
someone says none of us here are going and have perfect lives.
Right.
Why would we be going in otherwise?
Right. Every person that enters the Shimmer is going there. Yeah, somewhat damaged, is going there for self-destructive purposes. Even Kane, her husband, goes there because see, that's the thing though, is that it might be a subconscious choice for him.
I feel like he went there because he knew that she was cheating on him.
Right. See, but he never actually acknowledges it in the movie. So it's like maybe in his subconscious he knew, and so he went ahead and was. I mean, there's a theory there, which is he was just removing himself from the relationship so that she could be with someone else, because that might he thought that's what she wanted. Okay, so they're in the Shimmer. I'm seeing the Shimmer as a manifestation of their subconscious. Like basically everything that happens in the Shimmer, I think, has some kind of relation to things that each of the characters are going through. So let's skip to, I guess, the end. The different characters meet different demises throughout, and I think those have some symbolic meaning, but I think they're they're not like afterthoughts, but I think they're additions to what ultimately happens at the end, which is the main three characters, the ones that really matter, which are Natalie Portman's character Lena, Oscar Isaac's Kane, and Jennifer Jason Leigh's Dr. Ventress. So those are the three characters who have reached the lighthouse, which if you're buying into the fact that your shadow self is what you're facing, a lighthouse would be guiding your way to the light, or where you're supposed to be, right? So they get to the lighthouse. Kane has been there before, but in his encounter with his shadow self, which is what this mirror entity I think is supposed to represent, in his encounter, he ultimately destroys himself, and then his shadow self becomes who he is. He says a line that says, "Am I you or you me?" Meaning he can't at that point differentiate between himself and his shadow self.
I don't think it's just his shadow self, though. You keep saying just shadow self, but he's talking to a camera. He's talking to Lena. He's talking to all of us.
Well, and that was an interesting thing to some. Yeah. So maybe it has more meaning beyond that. But then after he says that, you're made very much aware that his shadow self is who's recording it.
So I'm also wondering regarding that, like, how long was he in that room with that shadow, we're calling it the shadow self, right? So how long was he in that room with the shadow self? Because when Lena is in there, her shadow self is apparently battling or mimicking her, right? Like,
right. And and the idea that they're battling each other, I think, is not quite accurate, because it's just mimicking her.
Sure.
So it doesn't attack her until she attacks it. She hits it, it hits her back. Right. She pushes it, it pushes her. She's up against the wall, pushing against the wall, it's pushing against her, because it's just mirroring her behavior.
She runs at the door, so it runs at the door.
It runs at the door too. I got that. So like, I guess what I was trying to ask was, like, Kane's shadow self seems to be moving on its own accord without mimicking him, really.
Good point. Good point.
I think it got a longer time to be.
That's what I'm asked. So that's what, like, I was curious to that, right? Like, she said, so in the real world, he was gone for almost a year.
Right.
So
I see what you're saying.
You know, time is different in there. Like when they were the opening first scene that opens up after they go to the Shimmer, she wakes up and they're like, she has no idea how she got in the tent, right?
Yeah, they're disoriented.
It's been 4 days, and
about 4 days plus. They're like we're missing like rations, as if we've been in here for 4 days or something.
Right.
So I was like, how long was he in that lighthouse with his shadow self? You know,
that's good.
It's a good. That is a good question.
Yeah.
So when he ultimately faces his shadow self, he loses essentially and is consumed by his shadow self, and he uses the phosphorus grenade to self-immolate. And self-immolation is there's a whole ritualistic thing. I think it's monks self-immolate in protest. There's like a big
but in nature it also has to do with, yeah, you're right, the ritual is what, cleansing to renew,
right? Yeah. I mean, maybe if they're believing in reincarnation, then yeah, that wouldn't be the end of their life. But so he ultimately ends up, I guess, losing to his shadow self and becoming his shadow self is the only thing that's left of him. So then we have Dr. Ventress, who so if the idea is that your shadow self is reflecting exactly what you're giving to it, the thing that she gives to it is total annihilation. She's the one who says this is what it wants. It wants total annihilation. And so that's what she gets from it, is that it consumes and destroys her, right?
But it's not necessarily what it wanted.
But that's not right. That's not necessarily what it wanted.
It's a mirror of her desire, which is to
right.
be annihilated.
Right, because she goes into it with cancer knowing she doesn't have a body left, right? Like she's going to be annihilated. So then we have Lena and her encounter with her shadow self. So the other thing that's really important here is the character's different professions. So Kane is a soldier. He's only portrayed as a soldier. So what do soldiers do? They take orders. They don't necessarily think, right? Like, I mean, they do, but like they're there to take orders, and they
have protocol. They have regimen,
right? Which is also connected to religion. So maybe that's linking back to him having more religious beliefs. And then Ventress is a psychologist and leader of the expedition. Shows she's all mind, right? So Kane is all body, Ventress is all mind, Lena is a biologist and a soldier. So she is mind and body, which I think this is how you get to her being able to overcome her shadow self by handing it a phosphorus grenade in sort of a peace offering. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting scenario where they tussle with each other, mirroring each other, or it mirroring her. And then she sort of gives it this peace offering of this phosphorus grenade, and then it illuminates. She defeats her shadow with light by bringing her shadow self to the light, defeating it. Then I think in terms of the movie and why everything gets destroyed at that point is its cells reproduce with the cells of the phosphorus grenade, which basically lights it on fire. It starts touching everything else, which then does the same thing. And then all of the shimmer is destroyed. So...
Well, is it destroyed?
Well, right. That's the question, right?
That's
so the
thing.
end...
I felt like the lighthouse is gone, and you see like the crystalline trees or whatever in front kind of go away.
Right.
But like they don't really answer the question. I was like, does
the doctor did? The doctor who's in the hazmat suit, he says it's all gone.
It's all gone.
Yeah, but it's like, hey man, did you find the crazy bear running through the forest? Like
I mean, yeah, we don't know what happened to animals.
Find the plant people that are standing in the farm, and or the 20 new varieties of flowers. Right.
I came to think that what ended up happening was it ended up starting at the lighthouse and spreading throughout all of the shimmer, and then ultimately it's all.
Which if you follow that theory that they're all interconnected, then everything that's connected to it, which is weird because so the opposite happened with Kane. He came to life when that burned down. You know what I'm saying? He was in the hospital.
Yeah.
And he was dying.
Yeah, okay, that's one thing I can't quite figure out yet. So at the end of the movie, anyway, Lena is still being interviewed by the scientist, and Kane was dying, now is not.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I wonder if it ties into this. Okay, remember when we see the soldier and they cut him open and his guts are squirming around? They cut him open, obviously, with the intent of showing everyone. And, like, he basically dies. Like, his self dies. He's a skull flower thing. Which is,
like, a horrifyingly beautiful scene.
Right, but, like...
He definitely exploded out.
But yet, okay, so if we're saying Kane has a shadow self in himself, I guess what I'm asking is, like, yeah, how are Lena and the shadow self able to leave? And are their guts squirming around? Like, or is it only so many things that can take this mutation, and then you die?
Well, I think
some things die.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of the process, right? Is like you have to reach the lighthouse or a certain level of enlightenment or a certain part within your own subconscious to even be able to face your shadow self, right? You have to be pushing and going on that journey, which is going to be tiring. It's going to be trying.
Yeah, you're speaking on a theoretical level, but I'm speaking.
You're talking about in the movie itself.
In the movie, like on a scientific level.
Yeah, so I think you're right, though. Maybe they do have to get to the lighthouse and share their cells in order to survive, to live outside the shimmer. So maybe that's why they survive, because everything is surviving because of the shimmer. And so if it's sharing its DNA, if it's sharing its energy with the shimmer, maybe it can't exist along with the shimmer if it tries to leave.
Yeah, maybe.
Because we don't see Lena get sick because it's all
the shimmer's already gone. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe the shimmer's not necessarily gone. Maybe it's in them now, right? And they're spreading it out.
Right.
Well, okay, so that's that. I mean, that
makes me wonder if everyone's gonna survive it.
So if you're analyzing this movie based on the idea of 46 and 2 as presented by Tool, you are thinking about it as they face. What's that?
Tool's not the original ones that had that theory, though.
No, but they are the ones who talked about facing your shadow self in order to achieve 46 and 2. They're not the ones who came up with the idea of 46 and 2.
Okay. Just confirming.
So if you're following their lines of logic, that by facing our shadow selves we'd be able to achieve a higher level of human consciousness, then at the end of the movie, they are a mating pair who both have achieved 46 and 2. In other words, they're both immortal, and they are essentially the new Adam and Eve. They can now reproduce and spread 46 and 2 to the rest of the human population.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the shimmer in their eyes at the end represents that they have been changed by the experience, and they both went through different ways of becoming this, right? He did it through self-immolation and self-sacrifice, I guess, and then she did it through actually facing and defeating her shadow self. But he is now the shadow. Like, this is where things get a little murky for me, is like at the end of the movie,
they don't have any shared history. Like, he's kind of a newborn baby.
Right, and that's good for Lena, though, because now he doesn't actually know about the affair. Right. So she gets a second chance.
And she destroyed her destructive tendency, right? If we're talking,
she destroyed her self-destructiveness, symbolically, or at least has control over it now.
He has I guess he has some of his memories, but not all of his memories.
Right, he's sharing memories, but he doesn't really have any connection to them because he didn't live them. So, you know what I mean? It'd be like having someone else's memories placed in your head. At least that's what I think it might be like.
So that's why you would think that. Then that's why, like, the version of her that survived is the original version of her.
Right, and there's a lot of theories going around that, like, so the movie's a frame narrative, right? It's being told from the perspective of Lena.
Yeah.
So, well, most of it anyway. So there's a possibility that she's an unreliable narrator, in that she's telling us these things and they may or may not actually be true because we're hearing it from her perspective.
But I don't agree with that she could be unreliable, or that she is unreliable, because I just don't see the evidence leading to it in the movie.
Right, because she tells them about flaws and things that got messed up and people dying and things like that too.
So the idea that she's unreliable ties in with the idea that the alien is a negative force.
Right.
So I think that's why people are really attached to it. But, like, I don't think the alien's negative. I think it's not good or evil. It's just is.
Yeah.
And it's, it's partly having a negative effect on our Earth because it's a new thing that's attached to Earth, but I don't think it has intent, except to survive. And so that's why I don't see from the movie how it would make sense for her to be unreliable and to lie to the doctor, who's basically us, right? The audience.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Like,
what's the story purpose of that?
I mean, she could be, like, at the end there, she obviously didn't tell them. I'm wondering how much she told them about being a clone or being cloned.
Well, theoretically, she told them everything we saw.
Yeah.
Which means they would know that Kane is the shadow self. He's not his real self, which is also strange. I don't know what that means.
So that leaves it open there. Apparently, this movie is based on a series of 3 books that are supposed to be. Apparently, they said that you should never be able to film this into a movie because it's that complex.
I think that's
That's whatever. But if you read the books, I guess they explain a lot of this a lot better.
I've heard better. I've heard they tried to explain it.
I haven't read the books, so I can't. I'm only going off of what I've heard people say. Versus,
yeah, we started looking up the books too after the movie, and they're considerably different.
Yeah,
the movie's almost a reinterpretation of the book. They're not
all 3, or just the first book.
Just the first book.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't know if all 3 are out.
I didn't check.
So as far as, like, my thesis for the movie goes, is there other stuff that you had that you wanted to talk about? With
I want to talk about the names and the differences.
Oh yeah,
I guess.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, one of the differences from the book is I feel like just from hearing, kind of hearing what other people said, the book is the characters are nameless, which to me is like typical sci-fi trope where in an alien, like you have an engineer and you have a mechanic and you have this, and you don't really get attached to those characters. So I thought it was an interesting choice for Alex Garland in the movie to give all the characters names. And so when we found out that they weren't named in the book, we looked up the meanings of the names.
Yeah.
Because
interesting. Okay.
Because obviously, with like the Ouroboros and the book, his choices are so precise and purposeful to the narrative he's telling. So like I thought that was interesting that Cain is her husband's name, and Gavin got some religious overtones from him. And if we're going biblical, and Cain is the jealous son of Adam and Eve who ends up killing his brother.
Correct.
Abe, so he's like, instead in the movie he kills a version of himself,
right?
And a version of those. But anyway, maybe that's too much.
No, that's good. It's not too much.
Shepherd, you remember Shepherd? She's the one whose daughter dies.
Yes.
And she like says, "Yeah, I mourn that. In a way, I mourn two people: my daughter and that version of me who I'll never be again." And Shepherd, and she's kind of kind, and she's the most empathetic, and she's the first one to die because we need things to come to a head, and we can't have a nice.
Well, and it's not just that; it's also she's sort of the sage archetype, right? So Jung also has is the one who came up the hero's journey and the archetypes, right? So so shepherd, it being a shepherd and herding the flock into and sort of being probably the most aware and the one who's gone through a transformation already. She doesn't necessarily need to go on this journey, right? So she's there to sort of be the inciting character, and then she has to go away. She's the one who possibly could guide them into their subconscious better than any other character. But then, she's the first one to get taken out. So what about the other names?
Like Thornton, she's the paramedic who ends up kind of going batshit a little bit toward the end.
Yeah, she went nuts, man.
Yeah, and it's interesting that her name, well, it's not, I mean, it's totally not unwarranted. I mean, Lena does lie to them, and I never could figure out why she lies. Is it
I thought they said it in the movie. Like, I think she didn't want them to feel like they were going back in there for him or something. There was a reason she didn't want them to question her motive.
Oh, you're right. So she lies there, but she also lies when she tells them, yeah, you should continue to Lighthouse. It's a faster route. You'll find the route along the outskirts. She lies, and I couldn't figure that out. But anyway, her name's Thornton. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
And it sounds like Thorn, and she's kind of a prickly person. That's the most I could get.
Right, and so I mean, that was another thing we were talking about too. Is like, okay, well, what are thorns designed to do? They're designed to be a defense mechanism for plants, right? They're so that others can't get close to you. So she's also an alcoholic, so maybe it's a thorn in her side. I mean, that's a little bit of a stretch, but I think that's probably why her name is Thornton.
Yeah, and then there's Josie Raddick, the physicist, who ends up becoming a plant.
Yeah.
So Raddick, if we're looking at the root word, I think it's Raddick, Radic, instead of the way they spell it, which is to eradicate, and also relating to or proceeding from a root. Oh. So, she eradicates herself and becomes the
plant.
Yeah. So.
And then let's see, Ventress. Yeah. So, Lena means light, right?
Right.
Yeah. So just her name just means she is the thing to defeat the shadow. She's the light, right? Ventress was another interesting one.
Yeah, I think vent means like come together. Is a Latin root word.
Interesting. So I wonder if it's sort of becoming one with her shadow, right?
Well, right, and then Triss, like huntress. She's kind of a very strong, but I don't know.
Like that character to me seems so like, I don't know.
Like done with everything.
Done with everything. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. She just kind of was like, you guys can hang here if you want, but I'm going ahead.
Yeah.
And then she just leaves, and you're like,
Alice, yeah.
Like, can we talk about the bear that just tried to kill us for a second before you walk out of here? Want to help me?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some meaning to be found in the names, and probably more than what we're even digging into right now.
So if Ven means like come together, and she ends up coming together with the entity.
Right. Yeah.
I actually also took you brought up Carl Jung, and when they all decide, when you figure out all the little things about all of them, and like in my head I was like, why would you volunteer for this like mission, right? Initially, like I remembered one quote that I wrote down from him, which was people will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own souls. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious.
Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably a direct quote about the shadow self, or at least that idea. That
one stuck out to me. That quote, I remembered it later when, some people are talking about Carl Jung, and The Hero's Journey is actually a really good book if you never read it.
Oh yeah.
No, after watching this movie, it makes me want to for sure.
Yeah, analyze movies based on the archetypes, and The Hero's Journey is.
You can actually watch that. On a side note, the Myths and Monsters, or whatever that show is on Netflix. The first one talks about the hero's journey.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
So,
yeah, but I think a lot of people are misinterpreting the ending of this movie as being a bleak one, in which the alien. It's
kind of what's that movie? The '90s movie that I feel like they think it is Species or something.
Oh yeah, Species.
Yeah, or Body Snatchers. Like I feel like everyone's reading the end this way.
It's like the alien tricked everybody, and now it's escaped, and now it's going to wreak havoc on the world. I'm like, no. The ending is about.
What we said. We know they know that Cain is not human.
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially. Yeah. And Lena is a whole different thing. They're not locking her up because they're not afraid of her. They don't think she's dangerous, right?
Right. And they have no idea how to comprehend the changes that have happened to these two people.
Right, which makes sense when they keep asking her, "Can you describe its form?" And she's like, "No." She's like, "What did it want?" "I don't know." Right?
Yeah. Like, saying no because she can't be like, "It looked like me,"
Right.
They're like, "Oh, lock her up,"
If you're analyzing it based on the Jungian philosophy of the shadow self, then this movie, the ending is a happy one. It's two people who have now achieved immortality. Like this is the the beginning of the next step in human evolution.
Well, it's not necessarily happy. You look at it as happy. I look at it as a documentary where the wolf eats the rabbit. Like if they are nature, if we've seen what the shimmer does, we've seen some things are going to survive and some things are not. But it's not good or bad. It's not happy or sad. It's just nature.
It's just the next step of evolution.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
It's not a bad way to look at it.
It's interesting that you think it's a happy ending, immortality, Gavin. Want that fountain to you?
Yeah, immortality sounds pretty great. until everybody around me dies, and then I'm like, oh man.
You'd be like, why
keep living forever, I guess.
Why did they all involve with me? Why am I by myself over here?
Yeah. I'm gonna be a plant. Bye.
You're gonna be just like that girl. Like, or on a corner and be like, where'd she go?
Yeah. Where did she go? Like
changed that fast, I guess.
Yeah. It's crazy. Well, I think that's interesting.
Well, I think when she gave into it, she changed that quick.
My theory was she didn't change that fast. Time actually moved at a relatively long pace, but by the time Lena got her ass around that corner, it wasn't actually seconds. It was actually like minutes.
I don't know.
My theory was that, like Gavin
said, time was wonky in there, man.
Right, but like my theory for her disappearing and for like Ventress keeping it together until she got to the lighthouse and Lena not disappearing is when you gave in. And so Anya goes down fighting, the paramedic goes down fighting the bear.
Oh, that was brutal.
Right, but self-sacrifice, that means, and then that girl gives in to it, becomes a plant,
right.
And then Ventress gives herself in after talking to Lena. She's like, bye. Like,
well, the thing that's interesting about Radek, who gives herself, right? That's the one who transforms into the plants. Yeah. So she's also like, she's portrayed as a cutter, right?
Yep.
And then her fate ultimately is like, well, I don't want any part of this anymore. I just want to just be something else. I don't want.
She thinks it's beautiful.
Yeah, I would rather be just a plant and not have to worry about these human confines anymore, right? I don't know. That was
actually the first one that almost dies.
What's that?
He's also the first one that almost dies.
True,
Well,
she gets
no,
grabbed by
Shepard
the
dies.
she gets grabbed by the alligator.
Oh, I see.
She
You're
doesn't
right.
die though. Yeah.
You're right.
She doesn't die. She's the one that almost dies. She gets yanked in by that crocodile.
Crocodile with shark teeth. Yeah.
That thing was the slowest moving.
That's another thing too. It's like if you get grabbed by an alligator and pulled under the water, you're probably dead.
Yeah, this movie is not perfect.
Yeah.
Lena goes in the water. She's like,
some line delivery. Some delivery of lines are like Gavin was. Can you remember anything where it's just so obvious?
Oh yes, I can exactly. So there's one moment. And I think this is kind of a writing critique, which I mean I'm not probably qualified to give, but when you're writing something and you're not thinking about the visual representation of that thing that's happening, you end up writing some weird lines. Like she picks up a memory card that goes to a camera and goes, "It's a memory card," and then puts it in the camera, and I'm like. We know, like you're doing it. It's fine. You don't need to tell us.
Yeah, thanks for telling us.
Yeah.
Well,
so,
we were watching...
like, you know what? It's for that one person in the theater who was like, "What the hell was that?
What's that thing?" Yeah.
Exactly what that was.
If you can't wrap your head around that's a memory card, you're not going to get any of this.
You're going to have problems later. Or so someone was critiquing it. We were watching, and he's like, when the person literally says, "Man, her consciousness must be inside that bear."
Oh yeah,
I would hate to die. That being my last thing. Bitch, no one wants that to be their last thing. It's a horrible way to die.
That's
Why
like
it's a surprise.
The way you deliver that line reminded me of like you ever see Hot Tub Time Machine?
Yes.
Oh man.
He goes like he was looking at it. He just goes, "It must be some kind of hot tub
time machine."
Yeah. For real though, there were moments like that where it's like, oh.
Yeah, when she says annihilation, she like pauses for a minute. Dramatic pause. It wants to annihilation us or something.
Annihilation.
Like those little lines I had to put in there for. It's kind of like the same concept of when they made the original Blade Runner, right? Like the studios were like
that voiceover,
the voiceover was in there.
Here's the weird thing though. Here's the weird thing. Is that there's a producer who worked on this project that basically assured that the creative vision is what was executed. Like, so we can't blame the producer for any decisions that were made. I mean, as far as we know,
the studio, right? Like I was saying, like in the Blade Runner, the studio was like, people won't understand this movie,
right?
But the director's cut had no narration in it,
which is way better.
Way better.
Way better.
I totally agree with you guys. Okay, the narration sucks, but. And I feel like that's where you get like those one-liners that we were just talking about, because someone in the studio is like, you need to explain that. The memory card thing, that's a stretch. But the fact that they're like her conscious must be inside that bear, blah blah blah. Those are
so like there's another kind of plot hole problem that I'm hoping I can address at some point. But the radios don't work because
oh yeah.
The radios don't work because of electromagnetic frequency problems, right? Like the radiation
are bouncing back
off
walls.
Right.
Everything.
So if the radios won't work, then why would the video cameras work?
Well, because a video camera is only just playing that card right in front of the radio is actually sending a signal out that's coming back.
Yeah, but if it's scrambling like with electromagnetic radiation, scrambling that, it's probably messing up those video cameras too.
Well, you don't realize that the radios aren't working because of that they're refracting the signal until much later in the movie.
Well, they watch the camera twice though. There's two different video cameras.
Right. That's what I'm saying. The cameras would work, but the radio signals wouldn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll consent to that one. Here's the bigger problem.
All right, you got another one.
Okay, they bring one video camera in with them, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the one that they plug the memory card into, and they see the soldier with his intestines all moving. And that one has full battery power, okay? But then we get to the video camera that's in the lighthouse.
That thing's been there for a long time.
It's been there for a year.
No, it can't have been there that long.
Yeah, it has to have been there that long.
So that's what I'm saying. Like in our world, he was gone for a year. In that world, how long was he there? That camera
could. The time dilation is different. Like whatever. The time doesn't work the same way.
So assuming he had a full charge on that camera and it was shut off or whatever on standby or whatever, and sitting there.
It was like low battery, convenient low battery. Go ahead and watch this little clip of your husband burning himself alive.
Yeah, I mean, so you can assume either time moves slower inside there too, so the battery wasn't running out as fast, Maybe.
Maybe.
I wonder.
Time moves faster in there, and it moves slower on the outside, right?
I wonder if you're right, because I kept going, why even have the part where it's like, we must have been here for 4 days,
Right.
rations.
Yeah.
And people are like, because he doesn't want to explain what the shimmer looks like when they walk in. And I'm like, we can
That's-
kind of see it. That
yeah,
doesn't
that's
make
fine.
sense. But your theory makes more sense that time is just different in the shimmer.
It's like
And the closer you get to the lighthouse, the weirder time would be, right?
Right. And also, why don't you just take a helicopter to the lighthouse?
Yeah, I don't know that one. That's true. That's a good point.
good point, man. I didn't even think about it. That's like, when you watch Lord of the Rings and you're like, why don't you just fly on those giant eagles over the mountain,
Yeah.
Put that shit in. There's a reason for that in Lord of the Rings. I'm not going to get into it. But
I know. Yeah.
yeah, but why didn't they just fly? Well, maybe because see, that's probably where the books will come in handy. I guarantee you in the book somewhere, maybe they say that. Maybe they try to move a vehicle. And, since electromagnetic shit shuts down, maybe the helicopters crashed when they went in there.
Oh, right. But if a helicopter crashes, the only reason it's going to crash is if like battery failure or fuel failure or something technical is going to be wrong, which means the cameras wouldn't work either.
Maybe the government only had radio-powered helicopters.
No, I mean, that's a good point. If it would be like an EMP going off in there, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's a good question.
But at any rate,
That's a good loophole.
There's a few
conveniences.
That is a good one. I didn't think there would be any mistakes in this movie, but that's a good one.
Yeah, that one's questionable.
It's
At any rate, okay, so
whatever.
We're down to like 10 minutes.
Oh,
so
wow. Okay.
let's talk a little bit about the potential impact and problems from this movie bombing in the box office.
Yeah, this movie bombed. So Gavin, give some.
How badly did it bomb?
All right, let's talk about some numbers here. So this movie's budget was $55 million. In the box office so far, it's made $26.2 million.
Wow.
So you lost some money. It's also not getting a theatrical release outside of the United States. It's going straight to Netflix.
Why it's losing money.
What's that?
Like, why isn't it getting a European release? Or
Well, I don't know why exactly, but they've decided that's the strategy.
That's why they're losing money.
So
Right?
I don't know if this movie needed that big of a budget. I think that they needed the special effects in the end of the movie for sure. They needed the bear. They needed I don't know if they needed the alligator, but like I feel like there's some things they could have cut back on, and made the budget a bit lower. And okay, so let's look at another movie that's has recently came out that has a similar budget. The movie Arrival had a $47 million budget. It made $203.4 million in the box office.
Honestly.
Now, was that only on stateside?
I believe that's probably total.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, why aren't they taking Annihilation global?
Right.
Good question.
Like, you think it has something to do with like?
Well, part of it is I'm pretty sure that the Chinese market's not going to touch it because they don't do anything with bones.
With what?
Yeah, but there's Europe and.
Yeah, they'd have to go. Like China's a big market at this point for American movies.
I know, but
wait, what does China have against the movie?
Odd choice. I'm not sure why they're deciding that. So here's the other thing.
Hang on a second. Repeat yourself real quick. I didn't hear you. What does China have against the movie?
China doesn't allow anything with skeletons.
Oh wow! What? Really?
Yeah, they censor anything that has skeletons in it. Bones.
All their horror movies are out of control, man. Okay.
It has something to do with I think either their religious beliefs or cultural beliefs or something where they don't. Yeah. So the reason why I know that is because World of Warcraft came out in China.
I remember that one world didn't exist there.
Well, they had to change the skeleton race, the Forsaken, because they couldn't look like skeletons in China. So
it's like someone's gonna be like, "Is that Grandpa?"
Right. So the movie Get Out, which I think sort of belongs in this category, it's a cerebral horror movie, had a $4.5 million budget.
Holy shit, that's so small.
Right?
I know. I was like, what? $4.5 million and you made this amazing movie? And it made $255 million.
Amazing.
So I'm looking at going, did Annihilation need to have that big of a budget?
It made more than Arrival.
I wonder if like Natalie Portman's paycheck was really high.
Right. Okay, so that's something, right?
Because you have cast somebody with less of a name.
Exactly. They could have saved so much money by not having all these big name actors
and
in it.
Natalie Portman was good in this movie. She wasn't like outstanding. She was outstanding in like Black Swan, but like I think she was good in this movie. But I don't think you needed her. You know,
you could have had someone just as talented with a lesser paycheck,
right?
Who's not as well known, is what I mean.
That's a good point. I mean, it did have a bigger cast, kind of.
It did, but like.
Kind of. I mean, its
a lot
cast
of people.
is pretty small.
So Tessa Thompson, who played Josie Raddick, was just in Thor.
True.
And Jennifer Jason Leigh is a well-known actress for many years. So anyway, I'm just saying you could have picked people who are less well-known.
I thought her performance was kind of subpar.
I thought she played vicious, like callous.
She just had some really lines that came off wrong. They just came off weird to me.
The psychologist?
Yeah.
I thought she was good.
She was good.
She's a weird. She's a weird actress to me. She's good, but I feel. So
at any rate,
I was trying to figure out if I can find out how much Natalie Portman got paid.
I think I'm also wondering if like Black Panther really demolished this movie in the theater, and that might have been part of it. But
yeah,
here's the thing: is that it's a reality these days that like you need to think about the Marvel effect on the box office, and Marvel has. I don't know. I'm at a point now where I think I don't want to see any more Marvel movies because
you shut your mouth.
Yeah, I'm not going to see any more.
I think I'm going to go ahead and boycott them.
After Black Panther, I'm not seeing any more.
What? You're not going to watch it more?
So part of it is that. Good Lord.
Yeah. So right now, Black Panther is at 786 million. Annihilation is what again? 26 million.
26 million.
Like, there's no chance. Like,
so
this is the problem. This is the problem.
I've heard a lot of people go see this movie and like it goes over their head. They think it's boring. They don't get it. They're trying to put it.
Or they think it's stupid and they think, duh, the aliens are just trying to take over the world.
Right. They're like trying to put it in this box of good and evil. And I'm like, Marvel has perpetuated this problem that this is what movies are. You go to the movie for 2 hours. You turn your brain off. You see some CG and explosions.
Hero goes in. Hero stops bad thing. Hero, or the opposite of it is hero goes in. Hero doesn't succeed. Bad thing wins. Those are the only two scenarios.
Which Marvel movie is that happening?
It's written like a comic book. The whole movie's written like a comic book.
What movie?
If we're talking about Marvel movies, all their movies are written like a comic book.
Well, right, yeah, and they're.
I've read some much more interesting comic books than the movies that are being made.
I'm not denying.
Written like Marvel comic books.
They're written like mainstream hero comic books.
Oh, yeah. I get what you're saying. Like people want that, and then you give them an intelligent movie like Annihilation, and they hate it because they're
right.
Well, let's talk about Civil War. Doesn't Captain America die in Civil War to make a huge
the comic books? Yeah,
it makes a huge statement about, but you can't kill him off in the movie because he's a fucking cash cow.
They might kill him off in Infinity War. So there's
what people keep saying, but here's the thing: even if they kill him off, they're just going to bring him back as a different actor.
So yeah, the whole there's a whole thing about what's his name, the guy who runs Marvel's movie side, Kevin Feige.
Yeah, Feige or something.
Feige or whatever. He made a statement saying any character that dies in Infinity War stays dead, and I was like, sure.
So no one's dying. Is that?
That's what I was like. I'm like, you're not gonna. You know what he's gonna do? He's gonna kill like the Falcon.
Yeah,
right, like Green Arrow.
In
like,
Avengers,
oh no.
In Avengers 2, how they introduce the fast guy, Quicksilver. What's his name?
Quicksilver, and they fucking kill him. I was like, oh my god, he's such a cool character.
And within an hour and a half, he's dead. So, but yeah.
So, I mean, looking at this as like a bigger problem, we're not getting big budget original films that are thinkers. You know what I mean? Like I'm seeing this huge problem, and Marvel has trained audiences for 10 years now.
Well, and let's take it out, right? Okay, so
that this is what a blockbuster movie is, and now Disney has gobbled up Marvel, has gobbled up Lucasfilm, has gobbled up Fox, and like, is this all that we're gonna get? Like, is this is it? How are we gonna climb out of this hole? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I mean, I think the majority of people still enjoy. I totally feel like the reason this movie didn't make as much is because it didn't go global. I feel like people still would enjoy it. Like you and I, for example, enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, but this movie bombed so hard, it made studios terrified to lose any more money on it. So they said no. They said no, we're keeping it. We're putting it. We're going to cut our losses. So that's what it says to me. It made 26 million total. These movies are making Black Panther's at 700 million. Like,
right?
You can't compare. Like, there's no way it would have made that much, even going international. Like, no one wants to see this movie. That's the problem.
But people went and saw Get Out, right? That movie cost, what'd you say, $4.5 million?
Yeah,
right.
Less than $5 million.
Less than $5 million, and it still made
over 200 million.
200 million. So
here's the thing. I actually just thought about this analogy. Okay, so when World of Warcraft was dominating video games, it was dominating the MMO scene. You had over 8 million subscribers that were paying $15 a month each. You were just printing money. Okay, every game company tried to make an MMO. They all tried to make a game that was just like WoW, and trying to cash in on what's happening. And I think that's what we're seeing in movies right now, is Disney is continuing to just, put out the same movie, switch out the characters, same plot line, 3-act structure. That's it. Here's your movie. Don't think about it too hard, because if you do, you're not going to like it. So now we're going to see, we're seeing already that all these other movie companies are trying to do the same thing. They're all trying to create cinematic universes. They're all trying to, tie into television, tie into that, tie into this other thing. And it's like, just stop. And the problem is, that's me. That's my opinion, because clearly it's working.
Yeah, it's never going to stop. You kind of have to accept it and then move on.
Well, I mean, we even look at Star Wars. Like, the new Star Wars movies are all junk.
But we can accept it and move on. That's the problem. Like, no movies like Annihilation are going to get made if we just accept it and move on.
I'm not saying that's it. I think movies like Annihilation will still get made. You're not going to get it made through, who made Annihilation? Was it Fox?
Yeah, who made it? It's a good question. Paramount.
Yeah. So Fox or Disney. Disney's definitely not going to make a movie like that. They're not going to give the money for it. Who may Get Out? You got to go with those indie companies, right? Searchlight and
Get Out's Universal.
Universal's a great company. They always make indie flicks,
Universal does?
Universal funds a lot of independent flicks. What's the one I'm thinking of? Searchlight, or that's Fox.
Didn't they just try to do the Mummy? They tried to make their own monster cinematic universe, and it totally bombed.
Yeah, they were like, let's bring back some of those. They had a bright idea to bring back the old movie monsters one at a time. Remember they did the werewolf, Wolfman, a couple years back with.
I don't remember that, really.
With Benicio del Toro, it was actually pretty good.
That was more than a couple years back.
I forgot about that.
But that's Universal, I believe.
That was like 2006. Still
a good movie.
Yeah,
really?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not arguing.
I haven't seen that one.
I've heard it's good.
Oh, okay. You know what I was thinking about Annihilation, though?
Go ahead.
It's like what's that one movie? It's like The Happening.
But good.
Oh man, I have not ever finished The Happening. That's the one.
I haven't either.
We should make
Mark
a drinking
Wahlberg?
game. We'll be so drunk by the end. How many times Mark Wahlberg looks scared? Huh? What's happening?
That's like every 5 minutes in his movies, man.
Well, we should analyze that one next time.
Mm-hmm.
We could.
Next episode. What do you think about The Happening? All right. We're over time. We better do some recommendations.
So go ahead.
Go ahead.
Who's got one? Who's got a recommendation?
I got one.
All right,
so,
let's go.
My recommendation for this week was The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. This is an old collector's copy. That's why it's silver.
Ooh, fancy.
But it's basically it starts out with him talking. So Stephen Pressfield is a writer. Okay. Have either of you guys ever read this book?
No.
Okay. So he talks about, he's a writer, but this can be geared towards basically it's winning the inner creative battle. He's talking to artists and mainly any creative about how you need to it's basically about focusing on what you want to do, but not focusing to a point where you weigh your own self down. So he talks about things in the book called, his main point in the book is something called resistance. And resistance is basically I'll use myself as an example. I have an illustration I need to finish, right? But for first start, your ego takes over at some point, and the ego and resistance work together. So ego will be like, let's worry about this in a little bit. Let's play this video game, right? So you start playing the video game, and then eventually you've been playing it for like 5 hours. Sure. And that's basically, at some point, resistance can take over and say, this is more fun than that stressful thing you still need to do. But the book itself is like not just about, it's not like all psychology. It's actually full of like very like important little short stories about how he beat those demons, for lack of better words, to like become the writer he is. And
he faced his shadow self and came out the other side.
But there's like a bunch of like really good like
bring full circle.
Like for example, like one of these is like procrastination is the most common manifestation of resistance because it's the easiest rationalization. It's the easiest to rationalize. We don't tell ourselves, I'm never going to write my symphony. Instead, we say, I'm going to write my symphony. I'm just going to start tomorrow. So like, there's little things like this book is like, it's not a very big book. You can get it on Amazon for like $5 now in paperback. This is an old copy. It sat on my shelves for years.
What's it called again? Who's it by?
It's called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield.
Okay.
It's good.
I'm trying to find, there was some really good ones in here, but it's one of these books that I basically left on my shelf for almost a year or two after my friend gave it to me. And then one day I picked it up to read it, and it just really inspired the hell out of me.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I should read that. 'Cause I definitely delude myself into not working.
So like there's it's got stuff like about not showing off, like being humble, like the professional doesn't need to prove himself to anyone. Like the professional doesn't need to be like, check out this awesome thing I made. You just do it. And you're supposed to do it, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. I think that's good advice on a personal level, but not necessarily on a business level.
Sure, on a business level, you still have to show the thing you made. I'm not saying you don't, but basically the point is you show the work, people enjoy the work, but pat yourself on the shoulder and get back to work.
Right.
Right. I think a professional, the intent is different, in which you show it and you're not looking for validation.
Yeah.
You're just sharing what you've created.
Well, I remember tying into that. I remember listening to the Nerdist podcast, and Jonah said something that was really interesting to me. He's like, "Yeah, I'm working on something, and I don't want to talk about it." And they're like, "Come on, asshole, talk about it." And he's like, "No, because if I talk about it, I won't do it."
Yeah.
But don't talk if I talk about it, there's a sense of completion. Yep. There's a sense of I've accomplished it, or like, why would I want to do it whenever he told everyone about it? So it's like, I find that really interesting for myself.
Finish it and then show it. Yeah.
That was a good one, Alan.
All right, who's next?
I guess I'll go.
Okay.
So there's a YouTube show or a channel called Lessons from the Screenplay.
Yeah.
Which Gavin found and I think is really good. Yeah, part of my pet peeve. I hate to call it pet peeve, but like I was getting a little frustrated reading some comments about the movie Annihilation. Because it was like people were saying, yeah, and there's probably an alien up in the sky, and they sent this like bomb. It's like a bomb that came to Earth, and now it's going to destroy Earth, and that's what it's about. Anyway, that's my opinion, and it's like, you can't just like pull stuff out of your butt and then say that's your opinion. Like to me, it's like you can have theories, you can have differing theories. I think there's a bunch of different perspectives on this movie. You opened me to a bunch. Gavin's opened me to a bunch. I've read a bunch online. But, like, they're supported by the movie. They're supported by things that happen in the movie. And so I'm just a little frustrated sometimes where it's like you're trying to debate with someone or have a discussion and they go, well, that's my opinion. And it's like, okay. So anyway, Lessons from a Screenplay, I think, does a really good job of talking about – sometimes I'll watch a movie or a scene and I go, God, that was so good. Like, and I can't necessarily articulate what is so good about it or like what they did so well. And Listen to the Screenplay does a really good job of breaking down screenwriting, directing, editing, cinematography, like, and not like all in one. He'll pick something and focus on a movie or on a scene or a couple scenes that portray it really well and explain what they're doing and why it works. And I think it's been I don't know, it's really just interesting to watch.
So the lessons from the Screenplay?
Yeah.
The YouTube channel?
Yes.
Also, your thing about people having like opinions reminded me of this quote by Harlan Ellison that said, "You are not entitled to your opinion. You are entitled to your informed opinion.
Yes.
No one is entitled to be ignorant."
Yes, gosh, it's beauty. It's
like one of my favorite quotes, because what you just said is I've gotten into many conversations with people where you're just like, did you even watch the flipping movie, or did you you read the book we're talking about right now, or are you just pulling shit from the aether because you just said a bunch of stuff that made the rest of this room dumber, you know?
Right. Like, and it's just like, I'm willing to listen if you're willing to just put in a little bit of effort.
Yep.
Tie it into what we were talking about. Yeah, but exactly. That's how. So anyway, lessons from the screenplay.
Lessons from the screenplay. I'll have to look that up.
All right. I'm gonna bring it down a couple notches with my recommendation. You guys ready? Okay. So I used to drink a lot of soda when I was younger, and it was real bad for my health. It probably ruined my teeth and destroyed my intestines. So I've now switched to LaCroix. Hey, LaCroix, would you like to sponsor our podcast?
Right here too.
So I thought these were kind of gross at first, and then I actually found one that I liked. So give these a shot. It's basically just sparkling water that's been essenced with fruit. And 0 sugar, 0 calories.
0 everything.
LaCroix.
Except taste. Also, did that not convince you? Go watch the music video LaCroix Boy by Big Dipper for some.
You should actually, Gavin, have you ever tried Spindrift?
No, what's that?
So this is another water, since you're talking about water.
Stop shitting on my recommendation, Alan.
I am
LaCroix. Shitting. Give it a shot. What do you have to lose?
$1. They cost $1.
This is Gavin being
$1.
Is this you being unprepared with your recommendation?
No, I'm serious. This is 100% my recommendation. LaCroix.
Look up Spindrift too while you're at it.
What do you have to lose? Call me. All right, that's it. That's the end of the episode. If anybody has any questions or that kind of shit, you can email us at WDYTA@gmail.com.
askWDYTA.
Yeah, that. Yeah, sorry, that's not the right email. askWDYTA@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts, feelings. Let me know if you like the LaCroix.
Only if they're positive, then.
Yeah.
Only if they're informed.
No, you can send us. Yeah. Send us your informed opinions.
They're all like, in last episode at 30:04, Drea confused Terry Brooks with some other Terry. It was really.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. we're gonna get some of those. You know that's what's gonna happen now.
Call me on my shit. Only send positive things to me, but you can send whatever about Gavin and Al.
You can send whatever you want, and we will read it.
We'll also delete it. All right, we're done.
Okay, that's it. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on WDYTA.
Peace.